The dust of the Ashvin labor camps never settled. It hung in the air like a punishment, red and thick and permanent. Wren had stopped noticing it 3 years ago. She wiped her hands on her work trousers and checked the tunnel support beam one more time. Solid. It would hold another week. Behind her, small footsteps shuffled through the dirt. She turned. Pip, a 4-year-old pack cub from the Quillen border clans, was dragging a toolbox almost as large as himself. His spotted fur was matted with sweat and dust. His large amber eyes squinted against the harsh work lights. He was trying so hard to be useful, to earn his place, to survive. "Set it down, Pip," Wren said, taking the toolbox from him. "You'll hurt yourself." "I can carry it," he said. "I am strong." "I know you are. Save it for later." She pulled a ration bar from her pocket and broke it in half. She gave him the larger piece without making an issue of it. He took it with both paws and nibbled carefully, making it last. Wren watched him eat and felt the familiar anger burn low and steady in her chest. Pip was just a child. He should be somewhere safe, learning things, growing up slow and warm and wanted. Instead, he was here, in this hell, pulling 12-hour shifts in tunnels that could come down at any moment, in a labor camp run by men who had long since stopped seeing workers as people. 3 months ago, Pip's parents had died in Tunnel 7 when the ceiling gave way. 19 workers buried in seconds. The camp overseer had sent cleaners to remove the bodies and sealed the entrance. No investigation, no compensation, no names read aloud. Just a lost day of production and a note in some ledger somewhere. Pip had been alone after that. The other Quillen workers in the camp had avoided him, not out of cruelty, but out of fear. Taking in an orphan meant sharing rations, and no one had extra. Wren had found him sleeping in a storage alcove, shivering and crying so quietly she almost missed him. She took him in that night. She did not think about it much. It just seemed like the only thing to do. Since then, Pip slept in her bunk, ate half her food, and followed her through the tunnels, learning how to read safety gauges and check support lines. The other Omega workers thought she was foolish. The camp guards thought she was soft. Wren did not care what anyone thought. The Ashvin labor camps sat in the dead strip between Ironmark territory and the unclaimed border wastes, the kind of place that belonged to no pack and was governed by no law, which was why Lord Cain Verath had chosen it 2 decades ago, when he'd first understood that the spaces between laws were the most profitable places to operate. Verath ran the camp with simple rules: work hard or get hurt. Usually both. He was a beta lord who had accumulated land rights through a series of arrangements that were technically legal and entirely corrupt. Buying border territory from packs who needed coin and didn't ask what he intended to do with it. He filled it with displaced Omegas, packless wanderers, border clan orphans. He fed them just enough to work. He paid them almost nothing. He made a fortune selling the ore they extracted to allied merchants who paid premium prices and asked no questions. The camp's enforcer was Garth, a massive man with no pack bond and no particular conscience, who had learned that fear was more efficient than fairness and had built his entire career on that philosophy. He was not sadistic the way some were. He was simply indifferent, which was sometimes worse. Wren had crossed him once, 3 months ago, when she'd filed a safety report about Tunnel 7's support structures and demanded it be reviewed before the next shift. Garth had looked at her report, then at her. Omega, with no pack bond filing official safety complaints, he'd said. Noted. He'd sent her to Tunnel 7 anyway. She'd survived because she'd been at the entrance doing pre-shift support checks when the ceiling went. 19 others hadn't. She never stopped thinking about that. The morning of the incident started like every other. Wren was in Section 3 running pipe checks when she heard Garth's heavy boots in the corridor behind her. She did not turn around. She had learned that turning around looked like concern, and concern looked like weakness, and weakness in this camp was an invitation. Moss? That was what they called her here. Moss. Not Wren. Not her name. She turned, kept her face level. Your section missed quota yesterday, Garth said. 3rd time this month. We hit a false floor vein at the 40-meter mark. Had to reroute the whole channel. I filed a report. I don't care about your report. I care about quota. His eyes moved past her. Found Pip, who was trying to make himself very small against the tunnel wall. Maybe you're distracted, Garth said, wasting time on useless things. He helps me work. Garth laughed. It was a sound without any warmth in it. That little rat. He eats food and produces nothing. You keep him like a pack pet. He lost his parents in your tunnel, Ren said. Show some respect. Respect. Garth took one step closer. You don't make quota, but you want respect. He reached past her and grabbed Pip by the arm. Pip cried out. Ren moved. She put herself between them before she'd consciously decided to. The way you sometimes do the right thing before your fear catches up to inform you it's dangerous. Put him down. Or what, Omega? You'll bleed for this creature? He threw Pip against the tunnel wall. The sound Pip made hitting the stone was small and terrible. Ren lunged forward. Garth was faster. His mailed fist caught her across the chest and something cracked. She felt it before she heard it, a deep interior wrongness, and then the ground was coming up to meet her, and she couldn't stop it. She lay on the tunnel floor. Everything was very cold and very far away. Through blurring vision, she saw Garth walking toward Pip. The cub was crying, trying to crawl, his small legs not working right. Garth raised his boot. Ren's hand found the signal pendant at her throat. She had worn it for 10 years. Commissioned by the Ironmark military during her service, coded to her blood signature, designed to transmit a priority distress signal to any Ironmark communication tower within range, she had never used it. Her fingers found the activation point. She pressed it. Garth's boot came down, but Pip scrambled sideways, still moving, still fighting. He looked at Ren, saw her broken on the tunnel floor, and something changed in his young face. The fear burned away, and something older took its place. He opened his mouth and screamed. Not a child's scream, a declaration. Mark them all. In the Quillen border dialect, it was an ancient phrase, from before the clans had formal law, from the era when the only justice was the kind you made yourself. When a predator attacked the pack and the cubs couldn't fight, they did the one thing they could. They looked at every face, memorized every detail, screamed the names into the air so that when the survivors came, they would know who to find. Mark them all meant, I see you. I will not forget you. Someone will come for you. It was both a witness and a war cry. Pip screamed it over and over until his voice broke. Ren pressed the pendant. The cold spreading inside her reached her hands. She could no longer feel them. Her last thought was a simple one. She had done her best. She hoped it was enough. Pip knelt beside her body, his small paws on her face, still crying, still repeating the words into the dark. Mark them all. Mark them all. Mark them all. Around them, other workers had stopped digging. They watched in silence as a 4-year-old pack cub mourned the Omega who had shared her rations, and her bunk, and her life. No one moved. No one spoke. They just watched, and remembered. Alpha King Cadron Ashvale was reviewing border reports when the alert came through. Priority signal, blood-coded, Ironmark military signature. His communications officer brought it immediately. The name on the file, Ren, no family name listed, former Ironmark military scout, honorably discharged, service record marked reliable under fire, would serve alongside her again. Current location, Ashvin Labor Camp, Border Zone 4. Signal status, active, audio attached. Kedron played it, 43 seconds. He heard the impact. Heard something crack that should not have cracked. Heard labored breathing that was already slowing. And underneath all of it, a child's voice, raw and breaking, screaming 3 words over and over in a dialect he almost didn't recognize. He played it again, and again. He checked the timestamp. 12 hours ago. The signal had bounced through 3 relay towers before reaching the capital. The delay of a transmission from dead zone border territory with no direct communication lines. He called for his council. 20 minutes later, 6 lords sat around the table. Kadrin played the audio without introduction. He watched their faces change. Disgust, anger, the specific helplessness of people who understand that something wrong has been happening for a long time, and they have been too comfortable to look at it. Ashvin camp, said Commander Rin, pulling up a territory map. Technically border waste, owned by Lord Verath under a 50-year land rights purchase, legally outside Ironmark jurisdiction. How many Ironmark citizens on site? Rin checked his records. 41 registered workers. Could be more. Ironmark blood-coated workers in a camp outside our jurisdiction. Their contracts were sold to Verath by a middleman we approved 2 years ago. We approved the sale, Kadrin said. We approved the contract transfer, not the conditions. We approved the sale, Kadrin repeated. The room went quiet. He stood and walked to the window. The capital spread below him. Stone towers and morning market noise, and the ordinary life of a pack that didn't know what was happening 40 miles east in the border wastes. Lord Verath operates 11 camps in the border zone, said Councillor Dwan, an older man who had been on the council long enough to know where all the comfortable arrangements were buried. His ore production accounts for— I don't care what his production accounts for, Kadrin said. Dwan stopped. What is the child saying? Kadrin turned to Scholar Miri, his linguistic expert. She had been listening to the audio on a loop since she'd arrived, her expression getting progressively more stricken. Quillen border dialect, she said. The phrase translates as mark them all. It's a very old usage, from before the border clans had formal dispute law. When a predator attacked and the cubs couldn't fight, they would identify every enemy. The phrase means, remember their faces. Someone will come. Find them all. A child said that, Rin said quietly. A child watching someone die, Miri said. Someone who protected him. The phrase is both a plea and a command. He's asking whoever hears this signal to find justice. Kadrin turned back from the window. Ren carried a military pendant, he said. She activated it, knowing it might not reach anyone in time. She did it anyway, because she wanted someone to know. The room was very quiet. She was one of ours, Rin said. She was one of ours, Kadrin agreed. He looked around the table, at every face, every calculation, every lord deciding what this meeting was going to cost them. Here is my order, he said. We move on Ashvin camp tonight. Full extraction. Every Ironmark-blooded worker who wants to leave comes home. Every worker of any origin who was held against their will comes home. Lord Verath will file formal complaint. Lord Verath killed one of mine, Kadrin said. The alpha bearing in his voice dropped to the register that ended discussions. That makes it my business. How we respond to that will tell every border lord in the zone whether Ironmark blood means anything. I intend for it to mean something. And the child from the signal? Miri asked. Kadrin's jaw tightened. Ren died protecting him. That makes him ours now. Rin, he said, take your best team. Stealth approach. I want those workers out before dawn, and I want Garth in chains before he has time to run. Understood, Rin stood. And Verath? Bring him to me. Pip had not spoken in 2 days. They'd locked him in a storage alcove after Ren died. Said he was disruptive. Useless. The darkness was complete. He sat in it and said her name over and over, so he wouldn't forget the shape of it. Ren. 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 He thought about her hands, the specific steadiness of them when she was fixing broken equipment, the way she split the ration bar every morning, pretending she wasn't hungry when he knew she was. He thought about the way she'd said you'll hurt yourself and taken the toolbox from him without making him feel small. She had been the only person in Ashvin camp who had treated him like he mattered. He had not heard the pendant activate. He didn't know if anyone had received the signal. He didn't know if anything was coming. He sat in the dark and hoped anyway. He did not hear the door open. Light hit him like a physical force, blinding after 2 days of dark. He scrambled backward, hitting the alcove wall, his legs not cooperating. Dark shapes in the doorway, tall, armored. Target located, juvenile pack cub, Quillen origin. Get him out. Hands reached for him. He tried to bite, too weak. They lifted him into the corridor. He blinked against the lights and saw them clearly for the first time. Ironmark soldiers. Full battle armor, the silver wolf mark on every pauldron. Not the camp's guards. These moved differently. Controlled. Purposeful. They were looking for something, and they had found it, and they were not stopping. One of them knelt to his level. The visor came up. A woman. Dark eyes. Expression that was doing a very careful job of not showing how much the alcove and everything in it had affected her. She reached into her pack and produced a small, pressed metal medallion. Standard Ironmark military issue, the kind given to soldiers for extended service. "This belonged to Wren," she said slowly, using simple words. "She was one of ours. That means you are one of ours now. Do you understand? You are Ironmark. We protect our own." Pip stared at the medallion. He had seen Wren wear one like it. She'd never explained what it was. He'd assumed it was decorative. "Wren," he whispered. "She sent us," the soldier said. It was not exactly true, but it felt true. "She made sure we would find you." Pip looked at the soldiers, their armor, their weapons, their faces that were angry in the specific, cold, controlled way of people who had made a decision and intended to see it through. He thought about the words he had screamed in the tunnel. Maybe someone had heard. Maybe someone had come. "Can we go now?" he asked. "Yes, hold on." She lifted him. He wrapped his arms around her neck. She smelled like metal and winter air. Not like Wren, who had smelled like tunnel dust and the dried herb she kept in her left pocket. But it felt safe, anyway. The soldiers moved fast through the camp corridors. Pip heard shouting, the clang of weapons, shouted orders being given and countermanded. The camp's guards, he understood, were discovering that this was not the kind of night they had expected. They reached the main worker barracks. Hundreds of workers of different origins, Omega rank, packless wanderers, border clan orphans, were pressed together looking frightened and uncertain. More Ironmark soldiers stood throughout the space. One of them was speaking in multiple dialects, his voice carrying easily through the room. "Ironmark is evacuating all workers who wish to leave. No cost, no contract. Free passage to safe territory. You have until dawn." The workers looked at each other. Free passage? No one gave workers free passage. There had to be a condition. "This is not a trick," the soldier continued. "Ironmark protects its own. Tonight, that means everyone trapped here. Get your things." An older female worker stepped forward. "What about Garth? What about the overseers?" The soldier's expression did not change. "Garth is being handled." Slowly, carefully, workers began gathering their few possessions. Some wept. Some stood in silent shock. Some looked at each other as if waiting for permission to believe it. Pip watched from the soldier's arms and felt something he couldn't name. A warmth in his chest that was too large and too fragile at the same time, like something that had been very cold for a very long time was beginning, cautiously, to thaw. They brought Garth out in chains just before dawn. Pip saw him from the landing field as the workers filed onto the Ironmark transports, 3-pack warships that had settled outside the camp perimeter in the dark, large and dark-hulled, and carrying the silver wolf of the Ashvale bloodline on their flanks. Garth was on his knees, hands bound, soldiers on every side. His face was cut where he'd apparently made someone's decision for them, and he looked smaller than Pip remembered. Not physically, but in the way that people look smaller when the thing that made them large is no longer present. When his eyes found Pip, something moved through them. "You brought them," Garth said. "You called them here." Pip said nothing. He just looked at the man who had killed Wren with the same steady eyes that Wren had used on people twice her size. One of the soldiers leaned down to Garth. "You killed one of ours. You hurt a child. In Ironmark, that means you answer for it. Not to the camp lord, not to the labor council. You answer to the king." They dragged him onto a transport. Pip watched him go. He felt nothing sharp. No satisfaction. No joy. Just a quiet emptiness where rage had been, and underneath it, grief for the person whose absence made all of this necessary. The soldier carrying Pip brought him onto the last transport, set him down in a padded seat, strapped him in. "You're safe now," she said. "We're going home." "Where is home?" Pip asked. "Ironmark Capital. You'll like it. There are trees, green ones. The sky isn't red." "Wren talked about trees," Pip said. "Yes," the soldier said. "She did." "What is your name?" "Lyra." Lyra. Did she know? Did she know someone would hear the signal? Lyra was quiet for a moment. "I think she hoped someone would," she said. "And she pressed the pendant anyway. That's what courage is, Pip. Doing the thing even when you're not certain." The transport lifted. Pip looked down through the small viewport as Ashvin camp shrank below them. The red dust, the dark tunnel entrances, the place where 19 workers had been buried in a ceiling collapse and no names had been read aloud. The place where Wren had split her ration bar every morning and pretended she wasn't hungry. "Mark them all," Pip whispered. "I marked them all, Wren." The trial of Lord Vareth and Garth was the most observed proceeding in Ironmark's modern history. Every pack in the 7 territories sent representatives. The border lords attended in formal capacity, which was diplomatic language, for they came to see what happened to people who got caught, and also they came to see if Ironmark would actually follow through. Pip sat in the witness position. He was small in the large, formal chair they had given him clean clothes, proper food, a clean, warm room in the capital barracks that was larger than anything he'd ever slept in. He looked healthier than he had in years, but his eyes still carried the specific weight that no amount of care could fully lift. The prosecutor was Advocate Ness, a sharp-minded woman who had spent 20 years making the law do what it was supposed to do rather than what powerful people wanted it to do. She asked Pip simple questions in a gentle voice. "How did you meet Wren?" "After my parents died. She found me in a storage alcove. I was cold. She gave me food and let me sleep in her bunk." "Did she have to do that?" "No, nobody else did. Everyone said I wasn't their problem." "What was she like?" Pip thought carefully. "Quiet. She worked hard. She showed me how to check tunnel support so they wouldn't fall. She split her food with me every morning. She said nobody should be hungry if she could help it." "What happened on the day she died?" Pip's voice went smaller. "Garth said our section missed quota. He said Wren was distracted. He grabbed me and threw me against the wall. Wren tried to stop him. He hit her with his mailed fist. I heard her bones break. The chamber was absolutely still. Every representative from every pack. Every border lord. Every observer. Still. What did you do?" Ness asked. I screamed. I said, "Mark them all in my language. It means remember who hurt us. Someone will come. I wanted someone to know what happened. I wanted someone to remember." "And Wren?" She pressed the signal pendant. Then she stopped moving. Ness let that sit. No further questions. Garth's advocate hired by Vareth's considerable remaining resources stood. He was a practiced man who had defended difficult positions before and had a talent for making reasonable things sound unreasonable. The child admitted he couldn't perform useful work, that he consumed resources without producing results. Is it not true that, He's 4 years old, Pip said. His voice was quiet, but it carried. He lost his parents 2 months before this happened. He was sleeping in a storage alcove by himself. Wren gave him her food because he was hungry. That's not a resource problem. That's a child. The advocate changed approach. Garth was enforcing established camp policy. Workers who failed quota. He killed her, Pip said. I was there. She did nothing wrong except protect me. He killed her for it. That's not policy. That's murder. The advocate sat down. Garth himself refused to testify. He sat in his restraints and stared at the floor, the specific posture of a man who has decided that the only remaining option is to be as small as possible. The prosecution presented its evidence. Medical records, testimony from former workers, men and women who had kept their heads down for years and now, in this chamber, found they had things to say, audio from the pendant. All 43 seconds of it. They played it in full. The chamber sat with the sound of Wren's last breathing, and a child screaming for what felt like a very long time after it ended. Several of the border lords were looking at the floor. Lord Brennan, the most senior border lord, a man who had been in the assembly since before Cadron took the throne, and who had said almost nothing since arriving, rose during the evidence portion and addressed the chamber directly. The assembly must consider that labor practices in border zones have historically been governed by individual lords within Broad. Lord Brennan, Cadron said from the alpha seat. His voice was very quiet. Sit down. Brennan sat down. This chamber is not discussing labor policy, Cadron said. This chamber is determining whether a man who crushed the bones of an unarmed woman who was trying to protect a child should be held responsible for it. I am not interested in historical governance frameworks. I am interested in that question. Only that question. Continue. The verdict came on the third day. Guilty, all counts, both defendants. Garth, imprisonment, permanent removal from any position of authority over workers. Vereth, imprisonment, full seizure of camp assets, restitution to be distributed among surviving workers. When the judgment was read, Garth lunged from his restraints. The guards had him down in seconds. He screamed something that the transcription logs recorded as she was just an Omega. She was nobody. Pip watched from the front row. He watched Garth be removed from the chamber, still screaming, until the door closed and the sound cut off. Then he looked at the chair where Wren was not sitting. She would never sit in it. She would never see this. She had pressed the pendant in the dark and hoped, and she had been right to hope, but she would not see it. He felt something break in his chest, not in the way of damage, in the way of pressure releasing, like something that had been locked very tight was finally, carefully, being let go. She changed everything, Pip thought, and she never got to know. Outside the chamber, the response from the border lords was divided. Some condemned the proceedings. Vereth had friends. The border zone labor arrangements had made a lot of people comfortable for a long time, and comfortable people do not like being made to look at what their comfort costs. Lord Brennan issued a formal statement suggesting that Ironmark had overstepped its jurisdiction and that the border zone had historically operated outside the capital's direct authority. Cadron's response was delivered publicly, broadcast to every pack in the 7 territories. The border lords have suggested we overstepped. They are correct. We should have stepped there years ago. We approved contract transfers without auditing conditions. We accepted ore revenue from operations we knew were brutal and told ourselves it was someone else's problem. It was not someone else's problem. It was ours. Wren of Ironmark carried a military pendant for 10 years. She pressed it when she was dying because she believed we would answer. She was right to believe it. From today, Ironmark makes a simple promise. Any person in our territory, by birth, by work, by need, falls under our protection. Any lord, any overseer, any operation that hurts our people answers to us. The border zone can adapt, or it can test our resolve. We are prepared for either. 3 border lords immediately filed formal objections. 2 others, quietly, independently, began improving conditions in their camps. The Quillen border clans who had watched the trial through their own channels, with the focused attention of a people who have seen too many of their own disappear into labor camps and never return, sent a single message to the Faith Ironmark capital. It contained no formal diplomatic language. It said, "We heard the child's words. We heard your answer. We will remember this." It was signed by the Quillen High Matriarch. Cadron read it twice. Then he handed it to his communications officer with a single instruction. Send acknowledgement. Tell her we heard the child's words too. Pip was formally recognized as an Ironmark ward 6 weeks after the trial. They held a small ceremony in the capital. He wore formal clothes that were slightly too large. He stood between his new guardians, Commander Rin, and his mate Solya, and accepted their household name. Afterward, They took him to a memorial grove at the capital's eastern edge. A new stone had been placed there, her name carved in letters that would last longer than any of them. Wren. She protected the innocent. We remember. Beneath her name, 22 more names workers who had died in Ashvin and in Vereth's other camps, whose deaths had been filed as accidents and forgotten. Not forgotten anymore. Pip placed something at the base of the stone. A piece of red rock from the Ashvin tunnels, one of the last things she had ever worked on. He stood there for a long time. She would be proud of you, Rin said quietly. She was braver, Pip said. She died for me. I just told the truth. Sometimes truth is the bravest thing, Rin said. Pip touched the stone. Mark them all, he said softly. I marked them all, Ren. We made them see. A decade had passed since the Ashvin camp. The 7-pack territories had changed in ways no one had predicted. The Ren Accord labor protections for all workers in all territories, border zones included, was now law, enforced across 6 of the 7 packs. Worker deaths in the camps had dropped. Children could not be held as labor assets. Overseers faced formal accountability. It had not been easy. Brennan's faction had fought it for 3 years. 2 packs had temporarily withdrawn from trade agreements. The border lords had screamed about sovereignty and precedent and the natural order of things. They had lost. Not because Ironmark had been the largest or the loudest. Because an Omega with no family name and no formal standing had pressed a pendant in the dark, and a 4-year-old cub had screamed into the void, and someone had answered. Pip was 24 now. He worked as a cultural liaison between Ironmark and the Quillen border clans, people who had spent generations disappearing into camps, and who now had formal representation at the council table. He wore a small medallion around his neck every day, Ren's service medal, given to him by her former unit on the 1st anniversary of her death. He never took it off. He was at home in the Ironmark capital when news came through of a fever plague sweeping the Thornback settlements, a small, isolated community in the far eastern border that had historically had no relationship with Ironmark and no particular reason to want one. The Thornback Council issued a statement. They would handle the crisis internally. Outside help was not welcome. Pip watched the casualty reports climb. Children, specifically. The plague hit young immune systems hardest. He thought about Ren, about how she had not asked whether he was her problem before she gave him half her ration bar. He went on public broadcast without asking permission. My name is Pip. 10 years ago, an Omega named Ren died protecting me. She was not my clan. I was not her responsibility. She protected me anyway. Now I'm watching children die in the Thornback settlements while their council chooses pride over lives. I'm asking Ironmark directly. Please help them. Not because they're yours, because they need it. Because that's what Ren taught me. That's what you taught me when you answered her signal. You protect those who need protection, no matter who they are. The broadcast was repeated on every pack network within 6 hours. Kadron watched it in his study. He was older now. There was silver at his temples, and the lines of his face had deepened in the way of men who have been making hard decisions for a long time. He had a family now. Children who ran in the East Garden in the mornings and asked him questions he didn't always have answers for. He called his council. The Thornback settlement has formally rejected outside intervention, Counselor Dwan said. He was still here, still careful, still wrong in the specific practiced way of men who have been wrong for a very long time and have made their peace with it. Forcing aid on them proves everything their council claims about us. We offer, Kadron said. No soldiers. Medical teams only. If individual settlements want to accept, we send them. If the Thornback Council arrests our healers, the galaxy will see what they value more, pride or their children's lives. It was a careful answer. Harder to refuse than a demand. More difficult to condemn than an invasion. 3 Thornback settlements contacted Ironmark healers quietly within the week. The plague was contained in those settlements first. 2 months later, the Thornback Council, facing the undeniable evidence that their people in the treated settlements were alive, and their people elsewhere were not formally, grudgingly, publicly accepted Ironmark medical assistance. The plague was defeated. 4,600 people who would have died did not. Afterward, the Thornback Council sent a single emissary to the capital. He placed a carved token on the table, Thornback Bluewood, shaped like a child's open hand. In our tradition, this means a debt that cannot be repaid. You saved our children when we were too proud to ask. We called you conquerors. We were wrong. There is a difference between a conqueror and a defender. You showed us the difference." Pip watched the Thornback delegation's arrival from a window in the council building. He thought about Wren, about a tunnel in Ashvin with red dust on every surface, about a ration bar broken in half, about a pendant pressed in the dark and a child's scream aimed at the sky, about the specific, unremarkable courage of a person who had simply refused to look away. "She changed everything," Pip said quietly. He was speaking to no one, or to her. He had never fully stopped speaking to her, and she never got to know. His eldest daughter, a small Quillen girl named Ara, who had Pip's same serious amber eyes and her own forthright opinions about everything, tugged his sleeve. "Who are you talking to, Papa?" "Someone important." "Is she here?" Pip looked at the window, at the Capitol spread below, at the delegation in the courtyard, and the council building with its new carved inscription above the doors, the Wren Accord, her name in stone, and the pack territory beyond it, where workers had rights and children couldn't be held as assets, and overseers answered for what they did. "She's everywhere," he said. Ara considered this carefully. "What did she do?" "She shared her food with a child who wasn't her problem," Pip said. "And she pressed a button in the dark when she was dying because she believed someone would answer." "And someone did?" "Yes. And that changed everything?" Pip touched the medallion at his throat. "That changed everything." Ara looked at the window, at the Capitol, at the stars that were beginning to appear above the evening skyline, one by one, the way they always did. "Mark them all," she said softly. She had heard the phrase her whole life. She understood most of what it meant. "Yes," Pip said, "we marked them all." He took her hand and they walked home through the warm evening, a father and daughter moving through a city that was safer and more just than it had been 10 years ago. Because one Omega with no family name had decided that a hungry child in a storage alcove was her problem after all. That was all it had taken. That, and someone answering when she called. She pressed the pendant in the dark. She did not know if anyone would hear. She pressed it anyway. And the Alpha King roared, "Mark them all." And they did. And the world changed. Not because of armies or power or ancient bloodlines. Because one person refused to look away. And someone else refused to forget.